I'm Hans Nielsen, and this is a story of my family. My father was born in True, Denmark in 1895, and he immigrated to the United States in approximately the age of 19. He was the first of his family to immigrate.
How many siblings did he have, Dad?
He had one sister and three brothers, and one of them lived in Garner, and that's where my dad settled, in Garner. And those two were a two-man tiling squad in Hancock County. They did tiling, and in the winter, of course.
So Dad, for those that don't know, what's farm tiling?
Farm tiling. Well, farm tiling is put in the ground, and it drains the fields of standing water, and takes it, a tile carries it to a county tile, which then takes it onto the river. And I went with them quite a bit when I was a kid.
Yeah, Dad, you talked about going on Saturdays. What was your job when you'd go there on Saturdays?
Well, when you tile, you dig a trench. You start at the county tile, and you go uphill, in effect, because water only runs downhill. So you lay the tile going uphill, and it drains that part of the field there.
So Grandpa was born in 1895. He came to the U.S. in 1914 on the Oscar II at Ellis Island, signed in at Ellis Island. How did he get to Garner, Iowa?
Well, I don't know. I don't know, but it seems like I had heard that there were people of Danish origin that would pay for this way over.
They came here with nothing.
They came here with nothing. So anyway, somehow along the line, he met my mother, who worked in this restaurant.
And what's her name?
She was Anna Faas, from F-A-A-S, last name, from Stacyville, Iowa. Somehow she got to Garner, and she worked in this restaurant. And so I assume Dad and his brother Morris probably ate all their meals there.
Probably didn't do much cooking.
No, they didn't do much cooking. Anyway,
did you know, Dad, if they lived together at that time, or not sure?
No. Well, Morris and he may have. I don't know.
Yeah. And then they had another couple brothers in Michigan, right?
Yeah.
That later came and lived in Michigan.
Well, they had a sister
Okay.
who also came to. Actually, I don't know where she came originally, but she married a farmer from Belmont.
Okay.
And we would go and visit them every once in a while, like on the 4th of July, to her place or something.
What was
like
their
that.
last name then?
Yeah.
What was her married name then?
Oh, well, she was a Nielsen too, but Lena was her, Aunt Lena was her. And then the rest of her family, my dad's family, was Jim was a great big guy compared to my dad. But he lived in Ludington, Michigan, and he had a farm there, and on the farm was a sand pit, and they delivered sand. He and his son were in business. They had trucks, and they'd load up the sand from the sand pit, which was part of their farm. And I remember my dad saying he'd go up to Michigan, I think in the wintertime, because they couldn't tile anyway. And he said, we planted all these trees here. There's probably 100-acre farm, and the trees, he said, boy, the trees have really grown.
Yeah. So
when we did take a trip there, we stopped at Ludington, Michigan, and visited my Uncle Jim. And then Chris was a brother who lived in Detroit and worked for the Ford Motor Company. and I'll never forget when we finally went to visit him once. Let me go back. We didn't have a car until we bought the 1949 Ford we bought. And then one of those summers, we took a trip. We were in Detroit visiting Chris. He worked for the Ford Motor Company. They had no children in that family. And the Yankees were in town.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, really?
And
wow.
So, it took a few tears to get me to let me go to the ball games. We finally got him to agree to take us to the game.
Who was playing for the Yankees at that time? Do you
Joe
remember?
DiMaggio
Joey
was
D.
playing.
Was he
center
really?
field.
Was he really?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Johnny Mize hit a home run into right field. We were in the right field, but he was in his home run went to the upper stadium. Anyway, that was when we were visiting Chris. He gave me a stopwatch too of gold, and then we talked about Chris on the farm. And then when we were on that trip, Ludington, Michigan was about straight across from Milwaukee of Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
And I remember we took our car and put it on the boat,
Ferry.
and the ferry boat took us over to Milwaukee, and then we went home. Well, they had an old Buick in the garage, which I assume my dad had before he was married. And somehow we heard they didn't have a part for it, or it probably got on to where it cost too much money, and he was getting the house paid for, and
Yeah.
he wouldn't spend any money. He'd rather walk than.
So tell me about that. How would Grandpa go out and do farm tiling without a car?
Well, Morse, his
had a
brother, had kind of a pickup. It was a trash dumb old thing. I don't know how it ever ran.
But that was their work
But they
car?
had all the
That was-
tools in
Okay.
there. And,
Yeah. Other than that, you guys walked around town.
oh yeah.
You walked to the store, walked to
bicycles.
bicycles around town.
But
yeah.
yeah, I know we my mother always ordered groceries. She couldn't drive. Well, we didn't have a car anyway. But
but she never drove then,
No.
did she? Right?
No.
Yeah.
And so we would order things like groceries. We would order, and they would deliver the groceries, and then we would keep the slip of what we bought, and then the store would keep a similar sheet of the various charge on that particular day. And they had a real unique accounts receivable records. It was a great big thing with like a leaf of a book, and little snaps there where all of our tickets went underneath the N's, NIE, and they were alphabetically, and then they could lock that up at night.
Yeah.
So that was their accounts receivable record as far as you accountants.
Yeah. And you would go like once a week and pay the bill?
Once a week we
Yeah.
would pay the bill, and we'd walk up town with Dad.
Let's go back to how Grandma and Grandpa met. We think they met at the diner.
Well, I'm
And
sure
then-
it was. She
Yeah.
worked at this restaurant, kind of on the outskirts of Garner, on the way to Clear Lake with her.
Yeah. And then did he continue to farm tile after he got married?
Oh yeah, definitely.
But didn't she have an ultimatum for him kind of
Well-
at one point?
Yeah, because see, in the wintertime, they couldn't tile, and that was their only source of income. So my mother said, well, why don't you get a real job? So both he and Morris got a real job with the Iowa Highway Maintenance Department of each county had a group of people that plowed the snow and did everyone was
Road work, filled potholes.
Yeah, and
kind of
whenever there was where the water ran underneath the highway, those had to be cleaned out. Of course, my dad and Morris knew how to tile.
Yeah, know how to clean out a ditch.
So they did that.
Yeah.
They always took care of all that as well as anything else.
So did they stop farm tiling after they got those jobs?
Oh no. Every night after work, which was 5 o'clock, they were done working for the highway patrol, highway maintenance. They went out to the farm and worked till dark.
Jeez. What about Saturdays and Sundays?
Worked. Saturdays and Sundays, they worked. Sometimes on Sundays, they would stop maybe at 3 or 4 o'clock, but Saturdays till dark.
Wow.
He'd come home, sometimes just soaking wet, all his clothes.
Jeez.
It was hard work, boy.
So George Paul was the first child who died as an infant.
Yes.
And then who was the second child?
Well, Gloria.
Gloria.
And she's now married to Joe Wellick, and they live in Forest City.
And then it was you.
Then me.
You were the third child.
The third one, yeah. And then my brother was Joe, who actually he went into the Navy, and they laid cable. Well, that's it. That was his job in the Navy on a ship that laid the cable from Europe to the United States.
Wow.
And back and forth.
And that led to being an electrician.
And then he was an electrician, and they resided in Clear Lake.
Yeah.
And although he passed away maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell us about growing up in Garner then too.
Well,
what'd you do?
Well, we had
fun?
a paper out.
Yeah.
Both Joe and I had paper outs.
Yeah.
And we'd ride our bikes downtown, and at the post offices where we were, the Des Moines Register in the morning, and it would come from Des Moines, and they would drop it off in the post office, and there was 4 or 5 carriers that carried paper around us. So I had my route, which started at downtown and went south to the south end and ended about where we lived. And then on Saturday, we had to collect for the customers. It was 30 cents for the daily each day, and then 15 cents for the Sunday, I believe. So 45 cents, and you get $1, 55 cents is the change.
And then you had to collect and then go pay your bill every week?
We started out, in other words, we picked the papers up in downtown.
Yeah.
And my route ran all the way down practically to my house.
Yeah.
And then on Saturday, we had to get the bill paid because we got it, I don't even know. I guess the bill was probably in the papers that came or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, we knew what our bill was, and Saturday noon, we had to get to the bank before Saturday noon because that's when they closed.
So did you deliver the papers, turn right around and collect, and then go pay your bill?
Well, no, we ate breakfast at first. But yeah, collecting was, it was something we had to do. We had to get our money. I wish I would have saved the coins I had, like Indian head pennies, and all kinds of. And I started saving them, but I gave up on it finally.
Yeah.
But now I got another coin collection.
Which
you two guys know.
Oh, yeah.
They helped me move it one day.
Sports growing up. What was your favorite sport? What was your best sport?
Yeah. Well, basketball was my best sport. I guess.
What was your nickname?
Gunner.
Gunner Nielsen. Why is that? What was your nickname, Gunner?
Because I shot most of them. I did most of the shooting. Well, we had another guy on our team who was a big guy, and he was the tallest guy for about 3 or 4 classes, yeah. He played as a freshman.
Wow.
And he was the all-time leading scorer.
What was his name?
Daryl Joss. He was the all-time leading scorer until maybe 5 years ago.
Wow.
When somebody finally broke his record that he had for 4 years. And our senior year, between the two, I and Daryl, we averaged 50 points a game.
The two of you averaged 50 points a game. Dowling didn't average 50 points as a team this year.
I averaged 22 and he averaged 28.
That's amazing. Without the three-pointer either.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, you can imagine how many shots the other guys on the team got.
Very few, huh?
But I got a lot of layup points from Daryl would get to the rebound and throw it. And
just take off down the court. Yeah. Were you pretty fast?
Yeah, fairly.
You ran track too,
I
right?
ran track.
Yeah.
I ran a half mile.
Yeah.
Mostly. And anchored the medley and 4x8.
Wow.
And anyway, there's this one guy, I could beat anybody else in the conference except this one kid from Forest City. I've been trying to think of that guy's name because I have coffee at Friendship Haven with a guy who grew up in Forest City, and I kept asking, do you know this guy? I know what farm he lived on.
Didn't you famously run the state
Well,
cross country meet
Yeah.
too?
When I was a freshman, I didn't go out for football. We had a guy that was the English coach, and he was just first year out of college, and he went to Iowa State, and he ran cross country in college. There were hardly no cross country teams in the high schools around.
Didn't you go to Iowa City and run in the state meet then too?
Well, the state meet was in Ames.
I was in Ames.
And so they took us down for the Ames deal. Now, that's before there was hardly any interest in cross country. I mean, the parents didn't come, and they had flags. Like a red flag meant turn left, and a black flag turn right, and white one maybe straight ahead, whatever it was, I don't remember. But anyway, I was leading the state tournament with about a half mile to go, and I turned the wrong way. And so quite a few guys, and the guys were yelling, "Hey, Hans, you went the wrong way." My guys were.
Oh my
So
gosh.
finally I got him back in, but I think I probably could have won the state cross country meet.
If you wouldn't have taken the wrong turn.
Yeah.
Every day it's a getting closer.
When did you meet Mom, Dar? When did you meet
Well,
Dar?
okay. This one night we're at the Surf Ballroom, a Saturday night probably. I think it was a Saturday night. And so we're standing at the edge of the Surf Ballroom dance floor, and these two girls come dancing by us.
Twirling around.
Yeah, and they're both Darlene. Darlene
both
Rayons and Darlene Fermonic. Well, anyway, Corny was a very, what do I want to say?
He wasn't shy.
No, he was not shy.
Those are good friends to have.
Yeah.
A good
Anyway,
good
he
wingman.
grabbed Darlene Rayons. And that left me with Darlene Fermonic. So we danced, and she was a lot of fun. So the next day, I was going to go over to Hayfield and see her, and so another friend of mine went with me, and we went to their her folks ran a kind of a grocery store in Hayfield, and they had been farmers, but now their son was on the farm, so.
Leonard, right? Uncle
Yeah,
Leonard.
Leonard, yeah. We went into the store, and we talked for a while, Arlene's mom said, "Well, who was that?" And she said, "Hans Nielsen." "What's he doing here?" And the reason for that is these Bohemians, all married Bohemians,
Yeah.
and someone with a name like Nielsen, he was not Bohemian. So what's he doing here? And Darlene explained to her that we met at the dance last night, and but he's Catholic. Oh, well, then it's okay. And I remember when I went with her, then they'd always have picnics on Sunday, and somehow they got the feeling that I didn't like onions. And so there was always a bowl of potato salad for Hans with no onions, and the other one with onions.
Just for you.
And
Where'd you go to college at?
Loras College in Dubuque.
How did you end up there?
Well, I'll tell you, our priest had been an instructor at Loras, and came probably about when I was a sophomore or junior. He came, and my brother and I did most of the mass serving. The summer I think I had graduated. Was it like a Sunday afternoon, as I recall? The priest came to our house, and he wanted me to go to Loras. And my folks didn't know anything about college. He said, well, I've got a scholarship lined up for you, and you'll have a job in the bookstore. And so anyway, I went to Loras.
That's incredible.
First time my folks or I had ever been on campus is when they took me to go to school there for the first time.
Wow.
And
so he made all the arrangements for you.
he had taught at Loras for 20 years or something.
Wow.
And so he was well. Yeah, that
What was his name? Do you remember father's name?
Striegel.
Father Striegel. Okay.
Monsignor Striegel. He had taught, I don't know if it was just Loras Academy or Loras College, because there was a high school right next to there.
Went to college, but you and Mom still continued to date?
Oh yeah, and she was a year behind me. So after the first year, then she graduated from Hayfield and got a job in the bank in Garner.
Mm-hmm.
So for 4 years, she worked at the bank, and I finished college. I knew my folks were paying, even a little bit was a lot for them. Mm-hmm. And so I tried real hard, and I did pretty good on the grades.
Graduated on Sunday.
I graduated.
That was a big week then.
Yeah, it was a big
week.
I graduated on Sunday, and the accounting professor at Loras helped me line up. He says, well, why don't you check with the Edgar S. Gage and Company, who are in Clear Lake and Iowa Falls. So he lined up an appointment for me in Iowa Falls, and so I went down there, and that was the day this Darlene Rayons, who Corny had danced with, she was married to my roommate in Loras on Tuesday, I think, and Darlene stood up for her.
Was in the wedding.
Yeah. And then we were married on Friday, the same week, and that Darlene Rayon stood up for us too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you had a job interview on Tuesday. Mom was in a wedding on Tuesday. How'd the job interview go for you?
Very good. They hired me right away.
hired you on the spot. So you got it. You graduated on Sunday. Got a job on Tuesday. Mom was in a wedding on Tuesday. Then you got married on Friday.
Yeah, I guess it was Friday, Thursday or Friday. Yeah.
Yeah.
But all that happened in 1 week.
Where was Debbie born?
Debbie was born in Iowa Falls, and so was Susan. Then we moved to Davenport, and Susan was just a little baby then. So I was there a couple of years, and then the guy who with McGladrey was in Fort Dodge. He got a job with the Thermogas company out of Des Moines, and so I think they probably offered it to a number of different people, but they finally got down to me. Do you want to go to Fort Dodge? Sure, that's closer to home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we moved to Fort Dodge, And Steve was born shortly after in Fort Dodge. The girls were already born, and Steve was born. I never forget her sister would always come and get the kids when something was happening.
Yeah.
And so they took the two girls and took them to the farm and up at Garner. And
That was Aunt Dorothy Wood? Or
what?
Aunt Dorothy Wood?
Yeah, Aunt Dorothy
Yeah.
took the two girls, and that was Steve was born then. And I don't remember which one it was, but they still had a Mercy Hospital in Fort Dodge. They consolidated after that, but I was playing softball, and there was a big tournament on the 4th of July down in Ames, and we were entered in it.
That was probably Mike, because Mike's 5th of July.
Yeah.
That's when he was born.
So when Mike, I dropped Darlene off at Mercy Hospital, went on and played on the 4th of July in this big tournament in Ames, and then got back next time to get the berth.
Did you get back in time? When Mike was
that
born?
was the next day.
Yeah, yeah.
It was the 5th, right? You were born the 5th?
Yeah. Oh, so
Yeah.
on the 4th was the
Yeah.
tournament was just on the 4th.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
you were done. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah.
he was there, Mike, when you were born.
I played softball, which was in Fort Dodge, and we traveled all over. We had a pretty good team. Toward the early part of spring, and when softball season was about to start, I saw where there was not a diamond in Fort Dodge at that time, and so they were playing up in Badger, and so I grabbed my shoes and my glove and I went up to Badger for this one teams were playing, and this one team was warming up, and I went over there and I said, "You need any players?" And they kind of looked at me and said, "You ever played third base?" No, I hadn't, but I said, "Yeah, I can play third base."
I never played it though.
No, I hadn't.
Yeah.
But I remember in Garner, I used to watch the Garner Town team, and then when I went to college, I played with them too in the summer. But we had probably the best third baseman I'd ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was good.
Yeah.
So I think I knew how to play it.
From watching him.
Yeah. And so anyway, I played with them maybe 2 years, and then we kind of organized a bunch of my own friends, into a team, and we played a couple of years there. And we had any trouble with was Webster City, and they had Dean Olson, who used to pitch for Hormel, but Hormel closed up, of course, and then he went to Webster City. But he was probably one of the best in the state, and so we beat those guys once, I think, and it was the right to go to the state tournament one year. So we made it to the state tournament that one year when we beat Webster City out. Every little town had a tournament at the end of the year, and they would charge admission for that. Normally they didn't charge admission. They passed a hat maybe during some of these teams. But anyway, we're playing in the finals of the Rolfe tournament. We're playing Ayrshire, and Ayrshire hired a pitcher from someplace, and which a lot of these country boys, they were farmers, and but they'd hire a pitcher from somebody else, someplace else if they got into the tournament. Anyway, we're playing there. We took the wives along. Boy, we're lucky we did that, and. We ended up playing 24 innings. It was nothing to nothing. And we finally got a run. I don't know whether it was the top or the bottom of the 24th inning. And So we won the tournament.
1-0, 24 game inning.
About 2 o'clock.
24 game.
And this
Any game.
local, they were figuring on after the game is over, we'll have a big celebration, give you the trophy, whatever, and we'll drink beer because they had a cat, probably a bunch. They wanted to have a big party after the tournament was over. And anyway, 2 o'clock, we drove through town. There was nothing open.
Didn't the bar owner keep checking on you?
Well, the guy who he had a hatchery in Rolfe there, and yeah, he kept coming down. You guys done with this game yet? Register, Des Moines Register, finally picked up on this. I don't know how they did, but they ran a story on the 24 innings, 1-0, and they claimed it was the longest softball game ever played. The 3 of our guys, Bud Johansson played first, Ron Franny second, Donnie Pete third, and then our short and me third. That was our infield.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, you had so much fun playing softball.
Oh, yeah.
Grandpa was in the Army, right?
Yes, he enlisted in the Army, field artillery, and you know, as the caissons go rolling along, that was the song of the, and he didn't sing or anything, but every once in a while he'd whistle that.
That song. So he enlisted in 1917. Yeah. He came over in 1914. And he was 19 years old, and he enlisted in the Army in 1917. And then he was discharged in 1919 of August.
He enlisted June 9th, 1917. World War I was being fought in Europe. He was 22 and 3/12, whatever, third. 22 and 3 months. He was in Europe in the war from April 23rd, 1918 until he was returned to the United States August 20th, 1919. And he was discharged from the Army August 31st, 1919. He was not a citizen when he served in the Army, but other people have told me afterwards now that if you served in the service, that qualified you for citizenship.
Yeah.
And so after he was,
I would hope so.
he was discharged in the fall of 1919, I think, and December of 1990, he was named a citizen. And he was proud of the fact that he had served, yeah.
Yeah.
He was just a little guy.
But a powerful guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You couldn't outwork him.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
So darling,